Hey guys, thanks for coming by. So today I'm going to be talking about which base items to look for and which sequence you could say is the best to use for which base item that you would find. So just to review a few things, I have a few socketed items in here. I made one of these. It took about 6 to 7 rolls to get a 35% on the cast rate there. And I'm also using a regular one, but I've got that extra upgrade with the Superior Monarch just because I found it, basically. It had already had 4 sockets in there, and I might throw it on another character. But I've also got another empty Monarch here just to go maybe roll another spirit, maybe an extra one just in case for casting with call to arms and stuff like that. But I have prepared this sheet for you guys to take a look at. So this is going to be what we're going to be talking about today mostly, and I've got it here for you. I'm going to have a link to this available in the video description as well. But let's go ahead and take a look. So this is a document I prepared for you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get started on it. Now, as you can see that the Colossus Valge is here. Ethereal is your best choice because it's going to be used for mercenaries pretty much exclusively. And as you can see, my mercenary actually has one. I found an ethereal one, a normal ethereal one, and I used the socket recipe on there. Now, here it is. Here's the normal ethereal Colossus Valge that I found. I used the socket recipe on it, and I got 4 sockets, thankfully, and I made an insight in there. So that's pretty cool. This is his main weapon. He does pretty reasonable damage. He can take down some immune monsters with a few hits, and so that's what he's going to be using probably for a while. Now, the weapon he was using before is this Grim Scythe, which is also ethereal, and it's got a pretty low level requirement, but as you can see, it's got some pretty good damage on it, even though it's such a low level. But that's because it's ethereal, right? So as you can see, the damage is way lower, but it's still not too bad, right? But of course I'm going to keep the Colossus Valge on him, and I also have this really low level Valge for just a normal Valge, non-ethereal, just for basic insight aura, just for leveling, okay? Now, let's come back to my sheet here. So, we know the socket recipe, and if we don't, we can do a little refresh on that. So we're going to go to Ariat Summit, actually. We already got a window open, but we need the Horadric Cube. And just to recall, look for socketed here. Socketed weapon of the same type, not magic. Here it is. So this recipe is going to be 1 Ral rune, 1 Am rune, and an perfect amethyst with the weapon. Okay, and that's going to give you a chance to roll those sockets randomly. Now, in the case of Colossus Valge, it can only have a max of 4 sockets, as you can see. So that's why it's a pretty good weapon to go for one of your first merc weapons, okay? And that's why I have it here, okay? I got lucky with this roll. I actually found another ethereal Valge, Colossus Valge, and I used socket recipe on it, and I only got 2 sockets, unfortunately. But you'll have a 25% chance to roll 4 sockets with this weapon type. So that's why it's a good one to go after in the beginning with the socket recipe. This one, okay? So let's go back to my sheet. All right, so let's talk about this. What are the items we're going to look for? So, as I mentioned, an Ethereal Colossus Valve is a pretty good choice to go for. And this will be your sequence to use when you want to add sockets. Or if you find one, then you can go ahead and use it right away. So, for the Colossus Valve or a Superior Colossus Valve, you won't be able to use the recipe on this one, okay? On Superior. The recipe does not work for Superior items. As you can see, low quality and Superior items do not work with this recipe. Just to clarify. So that's going to be important to note when we go through the sequence here. Alright, so the Colossus Valve is going to be one of the first things we look at, and it's mostly used for Insight rune word, okay? For the Act 2 Merc. And I indicated which builds you might want to be using this for, okay? So this is how my table is going to work out. I hope it's helpful for you. And I'm going to have a link to this in the video description. Alright, so if we get 4 sockets on that, you're going to want to go with Insight or a Pride, perhaps. But I would say maybe use a Great Poleaxe for a Pride, just for the extra damage, okay? And it's a bit higher level. Alright, but I hope you can see how this works. So if you find one with 0 sockets, it's non-superior, we're going to use our cube recipe, this thing, okay? If it's 0 sockets and it's superior, and you want to use a Larzuk quest on it, you can also do that to add 4 sockets to that superior item. And remember, because Colossus Valve has a max of 4 sockets here, that's why we can use it with Larzuk, and he won't add more than 4. Okay. Now, let's go to the next one. Thresher. Thresher's pretty much the same thing, except we also like to put infinity in a Thresher, okay? So if you find a Thresher with 0 sockets, and it's non-superior, you can cube it, and hopefully get 4 sockets on that. Of course, with the Thresher, it's going to have a max of 5, so that chance of getting 4 sockets is a bit lower, okay? It's 20% as opposed to 25%. So just be aware of that. And of course, I'll have the rune words, the useful rune words and the bills here on the right, okay? So for a Cryptic Axe, this is just another elite pole arm, okay? It's about the same speed as the Colossus Valve here, as you can see. And that's going to have also some higher damage as opposed to the Thresher. So any elite polearm really is good for the Merc, as long as it's ethereal. And you can make Insight and Infinity in these. And since they're mostly for the aura, used for the aura, you'll be okay with pretty much any elite ethereal polearm, okay? Unless you're trying to min-max and get breakpoints, which is another topic altogether. But for the most part, the Mercs are going to be okay with pretty much any elite polearm. Alright. Now, for the Great Poleaxe, or a Superior Great Poleaxe, we have our sequence here. Same thing pretty much. Use a cube recipe on the non-superior. And if you have 0 sockets and a superior ethereal one, and you want to add 6 sockets, go for the Larzuk quest, okay? Now, the thing is, when we start getting into some of these other rune words, we can actually make different rune words depending on how many sockets we get. So, as we know, Insight Infinity, they use 4 sockets. Pride as well uses 4. But here we've got a few other things we can do, okay? If we get 5 sockets, we can make a Doom rune word, okay? And I use that weapon on one of my Enchantress Sorceress builds, okay? I haven't released that one yet. That's going to be coming soon for you guys. I'm still doing a bit of testing and figuring out the best build stats and strength and skills and everything, but that'll be coming soon. So just be aware, if you do get the amount of sockets that you didn't want initially, save that item, because there might be a different rune word that you can use those sockets for. Okay? Now, if you end up going with the 6 sockets on this, with an ethereal one, well, actually, I use that 6 socket one on my whirlwind barb, my polearm whirlwind barb. And actually, the build video guide for this whirlwind barb is out already on my channel, so check that out if you want. Now, for Giant Thresher, pretty much the same as the Ethereal Thresher. Of course, these things start to get to use a lot of strength and dex, so you just need to be aware that the higher you go with the elite polearms, the more strength they require. With the Colossus Valves being the most strength, but the Act 2 mercs can pretty much cover them. So just be aware when you trying to make one of these for leveling that the strength requirement is a factor, okay? Now, my merc, he has enough strength, okay, thanks to this Duriel's Shell, but if I take off his Duriel's Shell, even at level 88, he doesn't have enough strength to wear that, so I gotta keep that on him. But also be aware that Andy's Helm does give some strength. I believe it gives 30 strength. So the Andy's Helm is it's a good item to keep. Obviously, it's the best in slot for many merc helms, but okay, so it's 25 to 30. It varies, but this is also a good item to add with your merc if you're gonna go for the Colossus Valve. Okay. Now let's go back to this. So just be aware, if you're trying to make like an infinity or something, that the Giant Thresher is going to require probably 188 strength. Of course, an ethereal one will reduce by 10, so it would be 178. So just be aware of that. Alright, now for the next rune words, we're going to be looking at the armor rune words. And I use 2 of these in many of my builds, and as you can see, one of them requires 3 sockets. That's going to be Enigma, and then the other requires 4 sockets, and that's the Chains of Honor. Okay, so as you can see, lots of builds use Enigma. Yeah, it's just such an amazing armor that we use it like in many builds here. Okay, but of course, we also have some non-teleporting builds like the Javazon or the Whirlwind Barbarian. So we can use Chains of Honor in that. But basically, when we're looking for an Enigma base, we want to use the Elite Light classification on armors, and that's because light armors do not reduce your run walk speed by default. Okay, so when looking for an Enigma base, we want to use from these 4 pretty much. We also use this because it's light, and we also use the Archon plate, the most desirable one because of its inherently high base defense. Of course, as you can see, many of these go up to 467, 470. A lot of these have pretty high defense. Of course, the Archon plate will be the highest, but these are also still useful. So I say check your strength requirements in your builds and see when you're making Enigma which one would be best for you, because there's a few different options. And as I showed before, I actually have a Dusk Shroud that I might make Enigma in, and as you can see, it's got 454 defense. So I would maybe use this actually, because it has a very, very low strength requirement, and also it's got pretty reasonable defense. Okay, but that is just a thing you're going to have to check on your own when you're making your builds. All right. I say check the strength requirements for your build here first and make sure the defense is optimal. I think that 450 plus defense is pretty good. Okay. So try to keep those base items with the 450 defense if you're trying to make some sockets in them. Okay. Now for chains of honor, I'm gonna say probably Archon plate is the best, because when you're using these melee, well, Javzon's not really melee, but these physical damage builds, so to speak, I think you're gonna want the highest defense possible, okay, since you won't be teleporting. So I think Chains of Honor should be best in the Archon plate, okay? But Enigma would also work in the Archon plate. Just make sure you check your strength with this build. Alright? Now, for the next one, I have Great Bow here, and since bows can't be ethereal, that's not a factor here. But if you look at the page, where did I put bows here yet? Bows. Okay, let's go to weapons. Let's check bows really quick. Yes. So as you can see, the Great Bow already has a default of 4 sockets. And it's pretty much the fastest bow. Besides a blade bow, but that damage is slightly lower by 1 DPS there. Or not DPS, but just average damage. So I use Great Bow as my choice for the Faith Rune word, and I use this in my Boson build, okay? And we're using this purely for the Fanaticism aura for that Boson build, and we can swap them between the Merc and the Amazon if we want. But if you want to check my Boson build, that's on my channel as well. Look for my Diablo 2 build guides and you'll see it there, okay? But the sequence is pretty basic for this one. Just make sure if you find a non-superior, you can use a socket recipe. If you do find a superior one, you're going for that min-max damage. Then you're going to want to use Larzuk, and he will put 4 sockets in there for you, okay? Now, just one thing to remember when using Larzuk is that the number of sockets is determined by the difficulty level, okay? So the difficulty level plays into the number of sockets. So the higher difficulty levels get the most sockets, okay? You get more sockets as you go higher. And if you want to check the page, you can see here, for example, if we go to Great Bow, right? If you found a Great Bow in an earlier difficulty, I don't think it would even drop that early, honestly, but if you did, then it would only have 3 sockets max, okay? The eye level of the item determines how many sockets you can get, okay? So that's an important thing to remember, because let's say you find a like a crystal sword, okay? Well, if you find it in a lower item level, it's going to only be able to roll 3 sockets max. If you find it in that mid-tier item level, it's going to have 4 sockets. If you find it in hell mode, well, then you'll probably be getting 6 sockets if you were to roll the max socket amount on that. Okay? So just to be aware, when doing Larzuk, make sure your eye level is from a high place, okay? When you're using that. You can't just use something from normal, okay? It won't give you those max sockets. Make sure it's like from hell mode, okay? Alright. Now, for the next item, I have this Kraken Shell. So we're going to be looking for an ethereal Kraken Shell. and I use this item with the Rogue Mercenary in my Boson build, okay, because it has low strength requirement, much lower than the Sacred Armor, okay. So I have these notes here for you guys. Check that out if you want, but remember that the cube recipe will roll an indeterminate amount of sockets, okay? It's random. All right, you're gonna have to just make sure you know how many sockets you want and all that when you're rolling it up. Okay, now if you get 3 sockets, you can still use Treachery, okay? If you get 4 sockets, well, then you're gonna want to make the Fortitude in that, and you'll put that on the bow Merc, okay? And that'll be a great armor for her. All right. The next one, Sacred Armors. If you want to create the best Merc armor possible, well, you're going to want an Ethereal Sacred Armor, okay? If you find the superior one, that's even better. You're going to just send that straight to Larzik, okay? And then he'll put 4 sockets in that, most likely, all right? But if you find a regular one that you want to use the socket recipe in, well, there's 2 options we got. We can make a Treachery, or we can make Fortitude, okay? And these are both going to be pretty good for the Mercenary, all right? For the Act 2 Mercenary, okay? Now, for the next item here, we've got a Monarch, and as you can see, I have several different Monarchs on my my characters here. I found a superior one. Wait, that's just a regular one. I found a superior one. I had been working on it for a bit, and eventually rolled this 35% cash rate on there, which is really nice. But just one thing to be aware is that superior items cost a bit more gold to repair, okay? It's just how the game is. So it's not necessarily the best to get superior unless you're just stacked in the gold, which at this point in endgame you really should be, so it doesn't hurt too much. But just be aware that gold cost can be kind of a factor, okay? And I have this one. I'm working on this one for a bit, and hopefully we'll get another good roll. Actually, I have a build that doesn't even need 35% cast rate, so we'll just see how that turns out. Okay. Now, let's go back to this. So for Monarchs, it's pretty much the same thing. They can have a max sockets of 4. They're the only shield type that can have 4 sockets that has a reasonable enough strength requirement to wear, right? Because an Aegis has like 200 plus strength, and a Ward has like 185 strength. So that's just way too much. So that's why we go with a Monarch, okay? And also it's light, so it's not going to slow you down in any way there. Okay. So Monarch is our choice for Spirit, and a few other shield rune words, which I will have. Yeah, we got a Phoenix as well. So 4 sockets is your goal for the Monarch. Either been using your cube recipe or Larza quest. Go for those 4 sockets, and there are many builds and different fast cast rate requirements that I have. I have it all listed here, which each build has, you know, how much cast rate you would want minimum on each build. So I'm gonna have this again in the description for you guys to take a look at if you want. All right. So for an ethereal version, like the cast rate's not gonna matter too much. So if you want to make a junk spirit in that'd be good. We can use it on my Boson build here, and that's purely for buffing with Call to Arms, okay? Now, for Phoenix is a pretty high tier rune word to make. I do plan on using it in one of my assassin builds, and also you can use it in a Javzon build. I haven't finished writing these builds out yet totally, but I will. And so keep an eye out for that, because we might be using Phoenix in that. in which case we would still want a 4-socket Monarch. Alright, now for flails, as you can see, I do have a flail here. These are pretty easy to find. Just keep an eye out for gray flails, and with 4 sockets or 5 sockets is good. The superior is not going to matter because you're not using this weapon to hit anything with. So just remember that. So this will be call to arms eventually at some point, and as you can see, it has pretty low dex and pretty low strength requirement. So that's why I use this for call to arms. Let's go back here. Okay. Alright, and if you were to happen to have 4 sockets in that, well, that would be your Heart of the Oak rune word. Okay. And as you can see, I use it in a couple builds here. I use it in my Lightning Sorceress as well as the Wind Druid. And of course, 5 sockets uses many builds use call to arms on their swap. So that's why that 5-socket flail is also pretty good for that. Okay. Now, for the next one is going to be the Crystal Sword. And this one, make sure, if you're trying to use socket recipe, make sure you get it from a high eye level place, okay? Or if you're trying to just roll straight to the 4-socket, maybe you would want to find it in like late game normal to get this eye level here, okay? So that would be what you would want for the Crystal Sword. So just remember that the eye level determines those sockets, alright? And if you're using socket recipe, I think it's pretty easy to find Crystal Swords with sockets already in them. They drop pretty frequently, at least as far as I've seen. But if you get 4 sockets in that, you can build a spirit straight away. If you can get 5 sockets in them, they're also pretty good for call to arms as well, because of their low strength requirement. Okay. Now I do have a Crystal Sword I can show you here. So let's take a look. Yeah, I think I have a few. I may have already made a spirit in one of them. But as you can see, oh, that's a phase blade. Yeah, Crystal Sword is here. So as you can see, it has a pretty low strength requirement. So it will be easy to use as a call to arms weapon, okay? But that's gonna be the Crystal Sword, okay? Just for an honorable mention, you can also use a broadsword to make spirit in. Broadsword is also a good choice. Broadsword. Whoops, sorry about those dinging, guys. That's my search on the browser here. But a broadsword is also a good choice because it has max 4 sockets, alright? So that's just an honorable mention if you need an extra item to wear spirit. I actually use a spirit broadsword in one of my builds right now as I'm leveling. I made this for my Wind Druid, and I'm gonna just show you really quick here. Let's see. Yeah, so as you can see, I've got another 5-socket flail, but I do have a spirit broadsword. So broadswords are a good choice to use for spirit, and we've got a few other little low level rune words here that might be worth looking. So as you can see, I've got stealth in just a 2-socket breastplate here, an Ancient's Pledge in just a 3-socket shield, and then I've also got a Rhyme here, which is in a barbed shield, but it's got all resist, cannot be frozen and whatnot. I'm going to switch to this once I boost my resist a bit more, as you can see. But for leveling, these rune words like Stealth, Ancient's Pledge, and Spirit are going to be really good choices, okay? So just to make note of that. Also, another helm that I use is Lore, and you can make this in any 2-socket helm. I was using this previously before I upgraded to the Jalal's main, but as you can see, it's just an Ort and a Sol in a 2-socket helm, so this is a pretty good rune word to use while leveling. Now, I didn't include it on my list because these are things that you'll be able to just pick up, just keep note of your upgrades, and these will eventually be tossed aside, but they're still very good for leveling. Okay, this +1 skills and the lightning resist are pretty nice for leveling. All right, so just a couple things to keep aware of. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, now for the axe here, this double axe, we're gonna be using this in we're going to be putting Beast rune word in here. So as you can see, I do keep these double axes here. I've got 2, and I plan to put Beast in them eventually, or at least one of them, maybe trade another one off. But when we are making 5 sockets is the max for double axes. So when you're making sockets into this, you can use pretty much any high item level double axe to make your Beast rune word. And this is purely for the Fanaticism aura, because this build wait, I think it's in here. 110. Here it is, right here at the top. As you can see, is this 5-socket axe. You'll put Beast in here, and this aura is gonna buff all of your minions. Okay, so I use this on summoner builds. This is my choice. Okay. Now for the Colossus Blade, I have a Colossus Sword, unfortunately, not a Colossus Blade. But I'm gonna keep this anyways, just for the heck of it. But basically, there are a few rune words you can use, and they're both gonna be 6 sockets, so you may want to just go straight to Larzuk for this one. Okay, if you find like a superior ethereal Colossus Blade, it may be wise to just go straight to Larzuk on that, and then you'll be able to make a Last Wish, which I use on some of my barbarian builds. And also, if you were inclined to make a Whirlwind Barb with the sword build, you would want to put Breath of the Dying in there, and that would be the best choice of weapon for that guy. Okay, but also Last Wish is an incredibly good rune word. It costs a lot of high runes. I think it needs 3 jaw runes or something like that, which is insane. But yeah, and a burr and a sur. Yeah, this is an insane rune word. Okay, this is extreme end game, but it's an amazing rune word. It's gonna give you Might aura, and it has life tap. So I use that on some elite builds, like my Whirlwind Barb. The Magic Finding Whirlwind Barb build's gonna be coming out soon, so keep an eye out for that. But that's why I noted it as extreme support for Act 5 Barbarian. Okay, and this is gonna be the Colossus Blade. All right, now a Phase Blade. You saw a Phase Blade I had there earlier. This is gonna be for Grief. You could actually make a Last Wish in a Phase Blade, but I think Grief would end up being better, especially for builds like Smiter. Alright? So, since Phase Blades can roll up to 6 sockets, actually, Phase Blade here, you would want to make sure that you would probably want to be use a socket recipe on this, okay? To get 5. Because Superior can't use socket recipe, and if you use Larza it, well, then you're going to get 6 sockets. Alright? Because the phase blade only goes from 3 to 4 or 6. Okay? And some of these items may not even drop in these lower eye levels because that's like normal or normal difficulty, and phase blade isn't going to drop in normal difficulty, right? Because it's an elite sword. So some of this actually isn't even possible. Just be aware, okay? Now, I use Grief in a lot of my melee builds here, especially Smiter. 5 sockets is what you're going to go for. Hopefully you can just find them, and that would be the best and easiest. Alright, now for the next one, we are going to use a Sacred Targe, okay? And I used the Sacred Targe because it has the highest base block, right? Being 60%, and it's light, and it's going to be able to get that auto mod with all resist on it. So Sacred Targe is my choice for the spirit, for making spirit on the Hammerdin build, okay? So you can actually use Larza on this to get up to 4 sockets here. If you find like a superior one, you won't want to use Ethereal with this particular shield, but Sacred Targe, keep an eye out for those with the auto mod. Try to get high resist on these with the chromatic modifier, which is inherent to all those paladin shields, okay? So keep an eye out for that one. Alright. If you the next thing we want to look out is helms. If you find a few of these different helms, well, you can use all of them, but I put them in order of the most desirable, which is going to be Demon Head, okay? And these helms, we use Demon Head because some of these helms have way high strength requirements, Giant Conch being the highest one per defense, right? And strength requirement and defense is roughly the same for Demon Head and Bone Visage, but the Giant Conch is going to be high. The Corona is simply way too high. We don't even keep that in the table here. So these helms are good for making the Dream rune word, and that is a rune word that goes in helms and shields. And there's a particular build called the Tesladin, which I have written out, but I haven't made the video for this yet, but that's going to be coming soon as well. So this Dream helm is going to be simply 3 sockets, okay? And same sequence applies to helm, except the recipe is different. It's just this. It's this one, Ral, Thul, and a Sapphire, okay, for the helm, for the socketed helm, okay, if you're trying to keep recipe. So just make sure your strength requirements fit your build, and the defense is good. Sorry, can't talk. Been talking for a bit here. All right. Now for the next one, Vortex Shield is my choice for the Tesladin shield. And that's because we're going to make Dream in this one. And we use Vortex Shield for this one because it's going to have the highest base defense in there, okay? Let's go to Paladin Shields. Wait, where'd they go? Oh, we lost them. Let's go back here to Paladin Shields. There they are. Yeah. So Vortex is going to have the highest defense, alright? And that's why we use this one for the Tesladin build, okay? Same thing applies. Same thing's going to apply for Vortex, but of course it's going to have a max of 4 sockets, so just be aware that Dream is going to use 3 sockets, okay? So if you're looking for a Superior, make sure it has 3 sockets in it, and then if you're looking for the Vortex, just a regular one to use socket recipe, make sure that's not Superior again, okay? And then either of the auto mods would work. I tend to stick to resistance with these, but just be aware that they can roll also damage and attack rating. But I think that sticking with resistance is probably the best choice. Alright. Now the last one we have here is the Zakarum Shield, and I use this on my Smiter build, which I just released a video for. But same thing applies, same sequence. But of course, for this one, we're going to want all ethereal, okay? And that's because Exile auto repairs itself. I think it's up here. There it is. So Exile has that auto repair mod, so that's why you can go with an ethereal one, because it won't be damaged, because it's just going to repair itself. So I chose Zakarum Shield for the Smiter because it has the highest base block and the highest defense, and it also has the most consistent smite damage, okay? So it's got the best of all worlds. And this is why I recommend the Zakarum Shield for the Smiter build. So there we go, guys. That is my base item guide to look for. We're gonna go ahead and just look through all my base items here. I've got a few Enigma choices. I've got this light plate. I probably won't make Enigma in this. It has extremely low strength requirement, but the defense is pitiful, so I probably won't make Enigma in these things. I would consider this Scarab Husk maybe, and then maybe this Wormhide as well as that Dusk Shroud I showed you earlier for the socketed items. But guys, that's gonna be it for my which base items to look for video. I hope you guys learned something from this, and I hope you guys know what to look for now when you're looking for base items and which rune words go into them. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and a subscribe, and I'm going to also have this document linked in the video description below so that you guys can take a look at it yourself and reference it whenever you want. So thank you so much for tuning in to me once again, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye bye. Peace.